He left me sitting in a cheap diner for 3 hours on our anniversary, laughing with his buddies when he finally walked in. Told you she'd still be waiting. Their chuckles burned into me. I smiled, paid my tab and slipped out, my real plan already set in motion. 3 hours and 14 minutes. My husband's voice boomed across the quiet diner as he finally walked through the door, his 3 best friends behind him like a victory parade. Every head in the restaurant turned. He pulled out his phone, showed it to the elderly couple in the next booth. See that? 3 hours and 14 minutes my wife sat here waiting. Told my boys she'd wait all night if she had to. Jake was filming, Mike was counting money, Tom was laughing so hard he was crying. My husband slid into the booth across from me, victorious. So, babe, what did you want to talk about for our anniversary? The elderly woman in the next booth gasped audibly, her hand flying to her chest. Her husband half stood like he wanted to say something, but his wife pulled him back down. Nancy, our waitress who'd been refilling my coffee for 3 hours, dropped her order pad. The sound of it hitting the linoleum floor was the only noise in the suddenly silent diner. I looked at my husband's face, really looked at it. The satisfaction painted across his features wasn't new. I'd seen it every Tuesday during poker night. Every time he won one of these little power games he played with my dignity as the ante. But seeing it here in the place where we'd had our first date 15 years ago, while his friends recorded my humiliation like it was a sporting event, something inside me finally cracked. Not broke, cracked like a fault line that had been under pressure for years. Nothing important, I said, my voice steady as I pulled $40 from my wallet for Nancy. Just wondering when you became this person. Before we continue, I want to thank you for joining me in sharing these powerful stories of reclamation. If you believe every woman deserves respect and dignity in her relationships, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how her journey unfolds. But I knew exactly when. The transformation had been so gradual, so carefully orchestrated, that I'd missed it happening. Like gaining weight 1 pound at a time until suddenly you don't recognize yourself in photos. It started our 2nd month of marriage. I'd been 26, him 28, both of us playing at being adults in our first apartment. I'd gotten home late from my job at the marketing firm. There'd been a client emergency, phones ringing off the hook until 7:30. Dinner wasn't ready. Such a small thing. But he'd sat me down like a disappointed father, explaining how his mother had always had dinner ready by 6, how it was about respect for structure. I'd actually apologized and promised to do better. The next week I'd bought a slow cooker. Problem solved, I thought. But there was always another problem, another way I was falling short of his mother's example, another adjustment I needed to make. My laugh was too loud at his company parties. My opinions were too strong when his friends visited. My career was too demanding when it conflicted with his schedule. Remember when she tried to have that girls' night? Jake was saying now, sliding into the booth beside my husband. What was it, 3 years ago? Had to shut that down quick. They laughed and I remembered. My college roommate Sarah had been in town. I'd planned dinner and drinks, maybe dancing after. Nothing wild, just reconnecting with someone who knew me before I'd learned to make myself smaller. But he'd called 2 hours into dinner with an emergency. His boss was in town unexpectedly, needed us at a client dinner immediately. I'd left Sarah at the restaurant with apologies. There'd been no client dinner. He'd been at home playing video games with Jake, teaching me that my plans were provisional, subject to cancellation. The best was the promotion thing, Mike added, still filming despite my stare. When she thought she was going to take that director position. The promotion. I'd earned it, worked 60-hour weeks for it, had 3 different department heads recommend me for it. The salary would have been more than his. The night before I was supposed to accept, he'd sat me down for another talk. How it would affect our plans for children. How the hours would strain our marriage. How his career was at a crucial point and needed my support. I turned it down the next day, watched them give it to Brad, who had half my experience but all the right chromosomes. She made the right choice, my husband said now, reaching across to pat my hand. Some women just aren't built for that kind of pressure. Tom laughed, pulling up something on his phone. Show her the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet. Of course there was a spreadsheet. My husband actually looked proud as Tom turned the screen toward me. Columns and rows, color-coded and formatted. Wife performance metrics across the top. My name in the first row. Dinner punctuality, 94%. Obedience rating, 9.2 out of 10. Public compliance, perfect. Latest waiting record, 3 hours and 14 minutes. Below my name were other wives. Jennifer, Tom's wife, dinner punctuality, 73%. Obedience rating, 7.8 out of 10. Notes in red, requires frequent correction. Mike's ex-wife had a line through her name, failed system breakdown. It's not sexist, Jake explained like I'd asked. It's just data. Measuring what works in successful marriages. Successful marriages. I looked at the metrics they'd chosen. Nothing about love, trust, mutual respect, shared dreams. Nothing about the 12 years I'd spent slowly disappearing, edit by edit, correction by correction, until I was less person than performance. You know what the secret is? My husband asked the table, but really announcing to the whole diner. Consistency. Same expectations, same consequences, same rewards. Like training any intelligent animal. The word hung there while Nancy approached with the coffee pot, her hand shaking slightly. She looked at me with such profound sadness that I had to look away. More coffee? She asked quietly. She's done, my husband answered for me. We're leaving. Right, babe? This was how it worked. He'd made his point, won his bet, established his dominance. Now I was supposed to get up, follow him out, go home and pretend this was normal. Tomorrow I'd make his breakfast, iron his shirts, smile when his mother called to remind me what a lucky woman I was to have such a successful husband. Actually, I said, I'll have one more cup. The table went quiet. My husband's smile tightened at the corners. I said we're leaving. I heard you. I pushed my cup toward Nancy, who looked between us like she was watching a bomb being defused. But I'm not done. Jake's camera was still recording. Good. Let them document this too. You trained me, I said, my voice conversational like we were discussing the weather. That's what you've been telling people for years, right? That you trained me like a show dog. Sit, stay, wait, fetch. And I did. I performed every trick, met every metric on your spreadsheet. You're being dramatic, he said, but his audience was watching now, the other diners leaning in. Am I? Tell them about Tuesday nights. How you snap your fingers and time how fast I bring your beer. 14 seconds is my record, right? You were so proud when you told your brother at Christmas. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should. Or tell them about the head patting, I continued. Good girl, you say, and you literally pat my head. Like I'm a golden retriever who successfully fetched the newspaper. The elderly woman in the next booth had her phone out now, discreetly recording. Her husband gave me the smallest nod of encouragement. That's enough, my husband said, his victory souring into something else. Is it? Because I haven't even gotten to the best parts. Like how you made me turn down the director position because you couldn't handle me earning more. Or how you told your mother I was too emotional to handle important decisions so you manage all our finances. Or how every single thing I do is apparently part of your training program that you discuss with your friends like I'm a case study in behavioral psychology. Nancy poured my coffee, then in a move of beautiful solidarity asked, would you like to see the dessert menu? We have a lovely anniversary special. On the house. My husband stood abruptly. We're leaving. Now. But I didn't move. For the first time in 12 years I didn't jump at his command. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Jake's phone was still recording, but his hand had dropped, the camera angle forgotten. Mike had stopped counting his betting money. Tom was staring at his shoes. I said. I know what you said. The same thing you've been saying for 12 years. Jump and I ask how high. Fetch and I run. Wait and I sit here for 3 hours while you laugh about it with your friends. But here's what you didn't train me to do. You didn't train me to stop loving myself completely. There's still a tiny piece left and it's enough. I stood then not because he commanded it but because I was ready. I looked at each of his friends in turn. Jake, your ex-wife didn't leave you because she wanted equality. She left because you're pathetic. Tom, Jennifer cries in her car after grocery shopping because it's the only place she can be alone. And Mike, your wife didn't leave you for a woman. She left you for a human being who saw her as one too. The diner had become my courtroom and I was both prosecutor and witness. My husband's face had gone from red to white to a kind of mottled purple I'd never seen before. 15 years, I said, looking directly at him. 15 years I've been slowly disappearing, one correction at a time, one joke at a time, one pat on the head at a time. And you documented it all, made spreadsheets about it, turned my dehumanization into a competition with your friends. I picked up my purse, left the $40 on the table despite Nancy waving it away. Happy anniversary, honey. Enjoy explaining to everyone why your perfectly trained wife just performed her last trick. As I walked toward the door, I heard the elderly woman say loudly enough for everyone to hear, "That poor girl. Sitting here 3 hours on her anniversary while those awful men made bets." The last thing I heard before the door closed was my husband's voice, not booming anymore but small and defensive. "She'll be back. She always comes back." But I wouldn't. The perfect wife illusion wasn't just broken. It was incinerated, the ashes scattered across that diner floor along with his dignity and his friend's uncomfortable silence. 3 hours and 14 minutes I'd waited. It would be the last time I'd wait for anything from him again. The cold air hit my face as I pushed through the diner's door, but I didn't go to my car. Not yet. I stood on the sidewalk, breathing in the October night, letting the oxygen fill lungs that had been shallow breathing for 3 hours. Through the window I could see them still laughing, my husband already ordering food like this was just another Tuesday night with the boys. But let me tell you about those 3 hours before they arrived. Those 3 hours that changed everything. I'd arrived at 6:40, 20 minutes early, wearing the burgundy dress he'd bought me for our 5th anniversary. Back when he still bought me things that weren't household appliances. The diner hadn't changed much. Same cracked vinyl booths, same flickering neon sign, same Nancy who'd served us on our first date. She'd recognized me immediately, her face lighting up. "Anniversary dinner?" she'd asked, and when I nodded she'd actually clapped her hands. 15 years. "Let me give you the special booth." The special booth. Corner spot, more private, where he'd held my hands across the table and told me about his dreams. I was going to run a company, he'd said. "You're going to be my queen," he'd said. "We're going to be different from everyone else," he'd said. 7 o'clock arrived with the dinner rush. Families pouring in, the smell of pot roast and apple pie, the comfortable chaos of people ending their day together. I ordered his beer, the imported one he'd discovered last year and insisted was the only brand worth drinking. Set it across from me like a promise that he'd be there soon. 7:15. I made the first call. His phone rang 4 times before voicemail. "Hey babe, just checking you're on your way. I'm at our booth." My voice was light, unconcerned. The young couple had just been seated in the booth behind me, and I could hear them debating appetizers with the seriousness of nuclear disarmament talks. They were maybe 22, still believing every dinner together was an event worth celebrating. 7:30. The second call went straight to voicemail. "Battery dead," I reasoned. He was terrible about charging his phone. Nancy brought breadsticks without my asking, the garlic butter still warm. "Men," she said, rolling her eyes with theatrical sympathy. "They'd be late to their own funerals." But Nancy didn't know about the pattern. The business dinners where he'd arrive an hour late, blaming traffic while smelling like Jake cigarettes. The parent-teacher conferences he'd miss entirely, leaving me to explain his absence to teachers who'd stop asking after the 3rd time. My sister's wedding rehearsal where he'd shown up during dessert, annoyed that I'd texted him so many times about it. 8 o'clock. The dinner rush was dying down. A man dining alone at the counter kept glancing at me over his newspaper. He was maybe 70, wearing a veteran's cap, the kind of person who still believed in honor and keeping your word. I wondered what he saw when he looked at me, a woman waiting for her husband, or a woman who'd forgotten she didn't have to wait. I texted again, getting worried. "Please just let me know you're okay." The response came quickly, 3 dots appearing then disappearing. He was typing something then deleting it. The dots appeared again. Disappeared. He was there wherever there was, actively choosing not to respond. That's when the heat started in my chest. Not anger exactly, but something more primitive. Recognition maybe. Like when you finally see the optical illusion in one of those magic eye pictures. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. 8:20. Nancy refilled my coffee for the 4th time. "You want to order something while you wait, honey?" "Just coffee," I said, though my stomach was eating itself. The breadstick sat untouched now, cold and accusatory. The young couple behind me were sharing a milkshake, 2 straws, like something from a movie about the 1950s. The girl laughed at something the boy said, and the sound was so pure, so untainted by disappointment, that I had to close my eyes. My phone buzzed. Finally. But it was Jennifer, Tom's wife. "I'm so sorry." So, no context, no explanation. Just an apology for something I didn't yet understand. 8:45. I called his office. The security guard, Paul, answered. Mrs. Davidson? Oh no, your husband left at 5 on the dot. Seemed in a real good mood too. Said something about winning a bet. A bet. The word lodged in my throat like a fishbone. Paul kept talking something about the weather, but I'd stopped listening. Through the window I could see the sports bar across the street. The one with the neon beer signs and the Thursday night wings special. The one where Jake's truck was parked right out front. 9 o'clock. 2 hours. The older gentleman at the counter had paid his check but hadn't left. He was watching me openly now, no longer pretending to read his paper. Nancy had stopped asking if I needed anything, just hovered nearby like a worried mother. The young couple had moved from milkshakes to splitting a piece of pie, taking turns feeding each other bites. I pulled up our text history. Scrolled back through months of transactional messages. Pick up milk. Running late. Where's the insurance card? When was the last time he'd texted me something that wasn't a command or a complaint? When was the last time he'd said my name in a text instead of just, hey, or nothing at all? 9:15. My phone battery was at 12%. I'd forgotten to charge it, too busy making myself pretty for a man who was across the street, making me the punchline of another joke. I could leave. Should leave. But something kept me seated, some perverse need to see how far this would go, how much he thought I would take. Jennifer texted again. He's showing everyone. The livestream. Tom made me watch. Livestream. They were broadcasting my humiliation in real time. I looked around the diner, suddenly paranoid that everyone knew, everyone was watching. But it was just Nancy, the old man, the young couple who'd moved on to coffee, and a trucker who'd just come in for pie. 9:30. The couple behind me were leaving. As they passed, the girl stopped at my table. I hope everything's okay, she said quietly. Her boyfriend tugged at her hand, embarrassed by her forwardness, but she stayed focused on me. You deserve better than someone who keeps you waiting. From the mouths of strangers, accidentally profound truths. 9:43. The door chimed and there they were. I'd already seen them coming, watched them jaywalking across the street from the sports bar, Jake still carrying his beer bottle even though that was illegal. They were loud before they even entered, their voices carrying across the parking lot. My husband's laugh, the one that used to make me feel warm, now just made me feel small. And then he said it loud enough for everyone to hear, 3 hours and 14 minutes. That was a high score. Like my humiliation was an achievement to be celebrated. The rest you already know. The confrontation, the spreadsheet, my exit that was really an entrance to something else. But those 3 hours, those were mine alone. 3 hours of slowly understanding that waiting wasn't love, patience wasn't virtue, and staying wasn't strength. 3 hours of becoming someone who would never wait again. My car sat idling in our driveway at 6:17 a.m., exhaust visible in the cold morning air. I'd been sitting there for 10 minutes, engine running, studying our house like it belonged to strangers. The porch light I'd left on was still burning. His BMW was parked at its usual angle, taking up more than his share of the 2-car garage. Everything looked exactly as it had when I'd left for the diner 12 hours ago, but nothing would ever be the same. Inside I could hear him snoring from the bedroom, that satisfied, uninhibited snore of someone who'd won everything and lost nothing. The sound drifted through our bedroom window, the one I'd left cracked because he liked fresh air when he slept. Even now, even after everything, my first instinct was to worry he'd catch cold. I killed the engine and sat in the growing dawn light, my phone warm in my lap from hours of scrolling. Jennifer had sent 32 screenshots overnight. She'd been documenting everything for 2 years, she said, waiting for someone else to break first. My humiliation had given her courage, or maybe just company. The first screenshot was from 3 years ago. A message from my husband to the group. Day 4 of the silent treatment test. He's cracking. Made my favorite dinner unprompted. Apologized twice for whatever she did wrong, even though she did nothing. This is beautiful. Jake's response, genius. How long you planning to hold out? Until she cries. Usually takes 5 days. 5 days. I remembered that week. I'd driven myself crazy trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, replaying every conversation, every possible slight. I'd finally broken down sobbing in our bedroom, begging him to tell me how to fix it. He'd held me then, stroked my hair, told me I was overthinking things. That he loved me. That sometimes he just needed space to process his feelings. It had been a game. My pain had been entertainment. The next screenshot was worse. A detailed discussion about compliance training featuring someone's wife named Carol who'd had the audacity to disagree with her husband in public. The men spent 40 messages strategizing how to correct this behavior. Their suggestions ranged from public humiliation to financial control to something called affection withdrawal protocol. I scrolled to my husband's contribution. The key is inconsistency. Sometimes reward the behavior you want to discourage, sometimes punish the behavior you want to encourage. Keeps them constantly guessing, constantly trying harder. It's basic psychological conditioning. Pavlov figured this out with dogs. Dogs. We were dogs to them. My phone buzzed. A new message from Jennifer. Look at your Instagram. The tagged photos. I hadn't checked Instagram in months. He told me social media was for attention seekers and insecure women. But there I was, tagged in dozens of photos I'd never seen. Pictures from his company parties where I stood slightly behind him, never beside. Photos from family gatherings where I was always in motion. Serving, cleaning, fetching, while everyone else sat. One from last Christmas at his parents' house. Me carving the turkey while he and his father sat at the table discussing stocks. The caption, the best women know their place #blessed #traditional family. 67 likes. Comments from his coworkers calling him lucky and goals. I walked into our house at 6:43 a.m., my footsteps deliberately heavy on the hardwood he was so particular about. Let him wake up. Let him see me seeing him for what he was. But he didn't stir. The snoring continued, uninterrupted, secure. His phone lay face up on his nightstand, no password, no protection. Why would he need security from someone so well trained? I picked it up, noting the battery was at 12%. He'd been so busy celebrating his victory he'd forgotten to plug it in. His calendar was meticulously organized. Thursday, 10 a.m. Morrison Industries CEO interview. He'd blocked out the entire morning, added 3 reminder alerts. In the notes section he'd written, remember, confidence not arrogance. Mention leadership philosophy. Wear the Armani. I scrolled back through months of calendar entries. There were reminders for everything related to his career, his friends, his hobbies. Our anniversary wasn't there. My birthday wasn't there. The only entries related to me were things like, wife, grocery money, and tell wife about Chicago trip. Tell wife. Not discuss with wife. Tell. His email was a goldmine of casual cruelty. Exchanges with his brother about how I'd let myself go after 35. Discussions with his financial advisor about protecting assets in case of divorce. Dated 2 years ago when I'd still believed we were happy. An email chain with a headhunter where he'd listed his ideal salary requirement as, enough that my wife doesn't need to work. I prefer her available for my schedule. Available. Like I was a conference room to be booked. At 7:15 he finally stirred. I was sitting at the kitchen table, his phone in front of me, screenshots printing on our home printer. The one he'd bought for his home office but relegated to the kitchen when he got a better model. Why are you up? His voice was thick with sleep and leftover alcohol. He stood in the doorway in his boxers, scratching himself without shame. Couldn't sleep, I said, not looking up from his phone. He noticed it then in my hands. What are you doing with my phone? Learning. He crossed the room in 3 strides, snatched it from my hands. You don't go through my things. The way you don't go through mine? I pulled out my own phone, showed him the tracking app he'd installed. The one that shows you everywhere I go, everyone I call, every text I send? His face went through several expressions, surprise that I'd found it, annoyance at being challenged, then settling on condescension. That's different. That's for your safety. Pie's safety. I stood up, gathered the printed screenshots. Like the time you used it to show up at my lunch with Sarah? Or when you called me 17 times during my mother's birthday dinner because the tracker showed I'd stopped at a gas station you didn't recognize. You're being dramatic. This is about last night, isn't it? It was just a joke. The guys thought. I know what the guys thought. I fanned out the screenshots like playing cards. I have 3 years of what the guys thought. Every test, every score, every bet. Did you know Tom live streamed your entrance last night? 47 people watched me wait in real time. Someone named Brad said I was well-trained. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked genuinely uncertain. Jennifer sent you those? That little what? Woman who finally got tired of being treated like an experiment. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I'd once found endearing. Now I saw it for what it was, buying time to formulate a response. Look, maybe things got out of hand with the guys. It's just how we talk. You know I love you. Do you? Because according to this email to Jake, I'm a solid 7 who thinks she's a 5, which is perfect for management purposes. He actually laughed. That's a compliment. I'm saying you're better looking than you think you are. The fact that he thought this was a defense told me everything. I'm done, I said quietly. Done with what? Don't be ridiculous. Where would you even go? You don't have a job. Your sister lives across the country. You need me. Need. The word hung between us like a treaty waiting to be torn up. Actually, I said, pulling up something on my phone, I have an appointment on Tuesday. With Sylvia Martinez. His face went white. Sylvia Martinez was the city's most ruthless divorce attorney, famous for representing the wife of a senator who'd walked away with everything including his political career. You can't afford her. Your mother can. The silence that followed was beautiful. His mother, who'd never liked me but loved appearances, had already wired me a retainer after I'd sent her the screenshots at 6 a.m. Her response had been brief. Take him for everything. Then take a little more. But divorce wasn't enough. Not after what I'd learned. Not after understanding that I'd been a lab rat in a maze for over a decade. Your interview Thursday, I said casually, moving toward the stairs. Morrison Industries. Big opportunity. He grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just firm. The control gesture. What about it? I looked at his hand on my wrist, then at his face. Nothing. Just. Cynthia Morrison is known for being thorough. Very thorough. She likes to know everything about her potential executives. I pulled my wrist free and walked upstairs, leaving him standing in the kitchen surrounded by printed evidence of his own cruelty. Behind me, I heard him muttering, already calling Jake, already strategizing damage control. But I wasn't done. I was just getting started. And Cynthia Morrison was about to become my new best friend. I stood in Cynthia Morrison's private bathroom, studying my reflection in the mirror that probably cost more than my car. The woman looking back at me wasn't the same one who'd waited at that diner. This one stood straighter, eyes sharper, wearing my mother's Chanel suit like armor. 5 minutes, Cynthia called through the door. My assistant just confirmed he's in the building. Wednesday afternoon had become Wednesday night, our planning session extending through dinner. Sushi delivered from a place that didn't have prices on the menu. Cynthia had pulled up building schematics on her massive monitor, mapping out his journey through humiliation like a general planning a campaign. The beauty is in the details, she'd said, zooming in on the first floor lobby. See this spot? No cell signal. The building's structure creates a dead zone. He'll sit there unable to even distract himself with his phone. I'd watched her work with the fascination of someone learning from a master. She'd called her head of security, a former Marine named Marcus, instructing him to be personally involved. Professional but inflexible, she told him. If he tries to leave, be encouraging but firm about Ms. Morrison specifically requesting his patience. The plan had layers I hadn't anticipated. She'd scheduled real interviews before and after his slot. Talented young people who'd arrive on time, prepared, hungry for opportunity. They'd walk past him with their dignity intact while his eroded by the minute. The conference room temperature? She'd pulled up the building controls on her tablet. I'll set it to 78 degrees. Not enough to complain about, but enough to make him sweat through that expensive suit he'll definitely wear. But the masterstroke was the paperwork. 40 pages of forms about company values, diversity statements, workplace respect policies. Essays required about supporting female leadership and creating inclusive environments. Every question designed to make him confront his own behavior while he sat there waiting. He'll either lie on the forms or tell the truth, Cynthia had explained. Either way he loses. Lies make him confront his reality. Truth makes him unemployable. I'd contributed my own touches, details only a wife would know. He gets anxious when he can't check his phone battery. Claims it's about being reachable for work, but really it's about control, knowing exactly how much power he has left. Perfect. Cynthia had smiled, making a note. We'll have outlets visible but not working. Little, out of order, signs. Now, standing in her office at 9:45 Thursday morning, I could hear her assistant through the door. Yes, Mr. Davidson is here for his 10 o'clock. Yes, I'll let Ms. Morrison know immediately. Cynthia entered, closing the door behind her. He's wearing the Armani. His lucky interview suit, according to his LinkedIn post from last year. She'd researched him as thoroughly as I'd researched her. His college transcripts, his employment history, his social media presence dating back a decade. She'd found things I hadn't. A complaint filed by a female colleague at his first job quietly settled. A professor's note about his difficulty accepting feedback from female instructors. The pattern goes back 20 years, she told me Wednesday night. Men like him don't suddenly become this way. They're cultivated, encouraged, enabled. We positioned ourselves strategically. Me in the chair facing the door, angled so the morning light would backlight me dramatically. Cynthia at her desk, papers spread out like evidence in a trial. Remember, she said, adjusting my collar maternally, you don't need to justify anything. You don't need to explain or defend. Just let him see you seeing him for exactly what he is. Through the security monitor on Cynthia's desk, we watched him in the lobby. He was scrolling through his phone, probably reviewing his talking points. At exactly 10 o'clock he approached the reception desk. I have a 10 o'clock with Ms. Morrison, he announced with the confidence of someone who'd never been made to wait. The receptionist, briefed to perfection, smiled apologetically. Of course, Mr. Davidson. There seems to be a small confusion with the scheduling system. If you could just wait a moment while I sort this out. A moment became 15 minutes. He stood at first, then sat, then stood again. The lobby was deliberately uncomfortable. Modern art chairs that looked impressive but offered no support, positioned too far from outlets, facing a wall of abstract art that seemed to move if you stared too long. At 10:20 they moved him to the conference room. Marcus personally escorted him, all military bearing and professional courtesy. Ms. Morrison sends her apologies for the delay. She's very interested in your profile. If you could complete these preliminary forms while you wait. The forms were my favorite part. Cynthia had crafted them like psychological warfare. Question 15. Describe a time when you successfully collaborated with a female superior. Question 23. How would you handle an employee who consistently disrespected support staff? Question 31. What value do you place on work-life balance for your team members? Through the monitor we watched him struggle. His confident posture slowly deteriorated. He loosened his tie at 10:45. By 11 he was wiping sweat from his forehead with his pocket square, the one I'd ironed yesterday morning out of habit. Should we check his phone? I asked. Cynthia pulled up something on her computer. My IT department has access to our guest Wi-Fi usage. He's tried calling someone named Jake 6 times. Texted someone named wife once. Interview running long, home later. Wife. Not even my name in his phone. At 11:30 another move. This time to the third floor waiting area, the one with construction noise from the office renovation next door. Not quite loud enough to complain about but impossible to ignore. The drilling started every few minutes just as he'd settle into his phone. My battery's dying, he told the assistant around noon. Could I get a charger? I'm so sorry, all our chargers are currently in use. But Ms. Morrison should be ready very soon. He sat back down, defeated by corporate politeness. By 12:30 his degradation was complete. The Armani was wrinkled, his hair messed from running his hands through it, his confidence evaporated like morning dew. He'd filled out the forms 3 different times, each version getting sloppier, more desperate. Look at his posture, Cynthia observed clinically. Classic signs of learned helplessness. He stopped checking the time, stopped asking for updates. He's just waiting. Like I had waited. Countless times in countless places for 15 years. At 1 o'clock they moved him to the final position, the small room outside Cynthia's office. Through the door he could hear us talking, laughing occasionally, the sounds of a successful meeting. He knocked once, tentatively. Just a few more minutes, Mr. Davidson, the assistant chirped. She knows you're here. I thought about all the times I'd been told, just a few more minutes. At the doctor's office when he'd promised to come to the ultrasound for the baby we'd lost. At my father's funeral when he'd been closing a deal. At the restaurant for my birthday when he'd been proving a point to Jake about priorities. He knocked again, Cynthia noted, checking her watch. 2:13. He's getting desperate. Good, I said, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. We went over the final choreography. I would be seated when he entered, calm and composed. Cynthia would let him process my presence before speaking. We wouldn't explain immediately. Let him figure it out. Let him connect the dots. Let him understand that his humiliation had been orchestrated by the woman he'd treated like a trained pet. 2:40, Cynthia announced. 3 hours and 14 minutes exactly. Plus the 20 minutes you waited before he arrived at the diner. She pressed the intercom. Send him in. We heard him scramble to his feet, probably straightening his ruined suit, trying to salvage some dignity. The door handle turned slowly, like he was afraid of what he'd find inside. When he entered and saw me, his face went through a symphony of emotions. Confusion, recognition, fear, anger, and finally, understanding. He stood in the doorway, mouth slightly open, his prepared interview speeches evaporating like smoke. I leaned forward slightly, meeting his eyes with the same calm I'd shown at the diner. But this time I was the one in control. This time he was the one waiting for permission to understand what was happening to him. Sit, Cynthia said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd never been made to wait. We need to discuss your leadership philosophy. He collapsed into the chair like his bones had suddenly turned to water. The Armani suit that had looked so sharp this morning now clung to him with sweat and defeat. His mouth opened and closed several times, no sound coming out, like a fish pulled from water. Mr. Davidson, Cynthia said, her voice professional and cold, let's discuss your application. Specifically, your leadership philosophy. She pulled out a folder. His portfolio, the one he'd spent weeks perfecting. But clipped to the front were the screenshots I'd provided. The spreadsheet. The group chat messages. The livestream comments. He started, then stopped, his eyes fixed on the papers. According to your cover letter, Cynthia continued, reading from his own words, you pride yourself on managing challenging personalities and establishing clear hierarchies within team dynamics. Could you elaborate on that? His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. That's not. I meant in a professional context. Oh. Cynthia pulled out another paper. Because according to this message dated 6 months ago, you wrote, the same techniques that work at home work in the office. Establish dominance early, maintain control consistently. That sounds like a unified philosophy to me. I watched him shrink with each word. This wasn't the man who'd strutted into the diner last Thursday night. This was someone discovering that actions have consequences, that games have endings, that even the most well-trained person can learn new tricks. She set this up, he said suddenly, pointing at me, his voice cracking. This is entrapment or something. You can't. Can't what? I interrupted, my voice steady. Can't make you wait? Can't document your behavior? Can't use your own words against you? Cynthia pulled up something on her computer, turned the screen toward him. It was the live stream from the diner, his voice booming. 3 hours and 14 minutes. Told you she'd still be waiting. 47 people watched this live, she said clinically. 1,300 views by the next morning. You made your wife's humiliation into entertainment. Today we simply returned the favor. That was different. How? I leaned forward. Because you were the one in control? Because your friends were laughing with you instead of at you? Because you'd trained me so well you knew I'd sit there and take it. His hands were shaking now. The same hands that had patted my head like I was a dog. The same hands that had snapped fingers at me for beer, that had held up phones to film my tears, that had high-fived his friends after each successful training session. The forms you filled out, Cynthia said, pulling them from another folder. Interesting responses. Question 15 about collaborating with female superiors. You wrote, I've never had that situation arise. Question 23 about handling disrespectful employees. Establish clear consequences and maintain consistency. Question 31 about work-life balance. Employees should be available when needed. She set the forms down deliberately. Not exactly the answers we look for at Morrison Industries. You made me wait 3 hours, he said, as if just realizing the extent of it. You planned this. Actually, I said, You planned it. 2 years of networking to get this interview. Months of preparation. That new suit which doesn't look so new anymore. You even practiced your handshake. Too firm, by the way. Always trying to establish dominance even with me. Especially with you, Cynthia corrected. According to these messages, your wife was practice for your professional life. A testing ground for your management techniques. He looked at me, then really looked at me for maybe the first time in years. Not as his trained pet, not as his personal servant, but as a person who'd orchestrated his complete humiliation. How? He whispered. The same way you did it, I said. Systematically. Deliberately. With an audience to witness every moment. Cynthia pressed a button on her desk. Marcus, could you come in, please? The security guard entered, filling the doorway with his presence. My husband instinctively shrunk back. Mr. Davidson was just leaving, Cynthia said pleasantly. Please ensure he exits through the main lobby. The one with all the windows. Where everyone can see. This is illegal, he sputtered, standing up. I'll sue. You'll what? Cynthia stood too, all 5'4" of her radiating power. Tell people you were made to wait for a job interview? That you were treated exactly how you've treated your wife for 15 years? Please do. I'd love to see that lawsuit. Marcus stepped aside to let him pass, but my husband hesitated at the door. Why? He asked me. I gave you everything. A home, security, a life most women would kill for. You gave me a cage, I said simply. And then you were surprised when I learned how to pick the lock. He looked between us, two women who'd taken his power and used it against him. You've destroyed my career. No, Cynthia said, sitting back down. You did that yourself. We just documented it. Much like you documented your wife's training. Consider this your exit interview from your marriage. She'll come back, he said, but it sounded like a question. She always comes back. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, showing him a text from Sylvia Martinez, my divorce attorney. I have a meeting at 4. We're discussing your hidden cryptocurrency accounts. Oh, you didn't know I knew about those? Jake's ex-wife was very helpful. Turns out she kept records of everything during their divorce proceedings. His face went white. That's private financial. So was my dignity. But you made that public entertainment. Marcus cleared his throat. Sir, we need to leave now. As my husband walked toward the door, defeated and humiliated, Cynthia called out, Oh, Mr. Davidson? One more thing. I've forwarded your interview experience to my network. All of them. Every female CEO, every female hiring manager, every female HR director in the industry. They found it educational. He turned back, his face a mixture of rage and despair. You've ruined me. No, I said, standing up, smoothing my mother's suit. You ruined yourself. We just held up a mirror. Marcus escorted him out, and through Cynthia's window, we watched him cross the lobby. Every person he passed seemed to know. The security guards, the receptionists, the other candidates. They all watched him with the same expression. A mixture of pity and disgust. How do you feel? Cynthia asked me once he was gone. I thought about it. For 15 years I'd been slowly disappearing, one correction at a time. Today I'd made him disappear instead. His confidence, his control, his carefully constructed superiority. All gone in 3 hours and 14 minutes. Free, I said finally. I feel free. Cynthia smiled, the first warm expression I'd seen from her. Good. Now let's discuss your future. I meant what I said about that job offer. Any woman who can orchestrate this level of strategic planning belongs in corporate leadership. Through the window I could see my husband's BMW pulling out of the parking garage. He'd go home to an empty house. I'd already moved my things to a hotel. He'd call Jake, Tom, Mike, but they were all dealing with their own crises now that Jennifer and the other wives had started comparing notes. Tomorrow the locks would be changed. The divorce papers would be served. The financial audit would begin. But today, right now, I sat in a CEO's office as an equal, not a pet. The interview was over. His and in a way mine too. We'd both learned what we were capable of. The difference was I'd never forget the lesson. Cynthia's office phone rang as I was signing my employment paperwork. She glanced at the caller ID and smiled, putting it on speaker. Morrison Industries, Cynthia speaking. This is David Richardson from Richardson Tech. The voice was tight, professional. I'm calling about a reference check for a Mr. Davidson. He listed your company as his most recent interview. Cynthia's eyes met mine. Ah yes, Mr. Davidson. He interviewed with us yesterday. Could you tell me about his performance? Certainly. He demonstrated remarkable patience. Waited 3 hours and 14 minutes without complaint. She paused. Though he did seem to struggle with our company culture assessment, particularly the sections on workplace dignity and respect for all employees. The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably. I see. Thank you for your time. After she hung up, Cynthia turned to me. That's the 4th call today. Word travels fast in this industry. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Emergency. Check the group chat. Tom's losing it. I pulled up the screenshots she'd sent. Tom had discovered Jennifer's documentation and was frantically trying to delete years of messages. But she'd already forwarded everything to his company's board of directors, who were particularly interested in the messages where he'd discussed using company resources to track his wife's movements. I have to make a call, I told Cynthia. Jennifer answered on the first ring, whispering. He's been home for 3 hours, pacing and screaming on the phone with Mike and Jake. He doesn't know I can hear him from the basement. He keeps saying your name, blaming you for starting this. Where are you exactly? Locked in the basement bathroom. I've got my go bag like you suggested. The lawyer you recommended already has everything. Through the phone, I could hear Tom's muffled voice. She was supposed to be the broken one, the obedient one. How did she plan this? Jennifer, listen carefully. Call 911 if you feel unsafe. Otherwise, stick to the plan. The locksmith is scheduled for tomorrow at noon, right? Yes. And the mover's at 2. My phone beeped with another call. My husband's mother. I have to go, I told Jennifer. Remember, you're not alone anymore. I declined his mother's call, but she immediately texted, we need to talk about what you did at dinner. This is not how family handles problems. Family. She'd watched her son humiliate me for years and never said a word. But now that her own marriage was imploding, his father had moved to a hotel after the template comment. Suddenly she cared about family. Cynthia was reading something on her computer. Your husband just applied for unemployment benefits. Lists his reason for leaving as hostile work environment. Actually laughed. He hasn't been fired yet. He will be Monday. My friend on his company's board just texted. The investigation into the spreadsheet revealed he'd been using company computers and time to maintain it. That's misuse of resources and creation of a hostile environment for any female employees who might have seen it. My new apartment key felt heavy in my pocket as I left Morrison Industries that evening. The doorman at my building, a secured complex Cynthia had recommended, nodded as I passed. Evening, Ms. Williams. Williams. My maiden name. I'd started using it immediately, even before the divorce was final. Inside my apartment, boxes were still stacked against walls, but my mother's china was already displayed in the cabinet, her photos arranged on the mantel. Things I'd hidden in storage because he'd said they were old-fashioned and cluttered. My phone rang. Unknown number. Is this the wife from the diner video? My blood went cold. Who is this? My name's Patricia. I don't know you, but I saw the live stream. My daughter sent it to me. I wanted to thank you. Thank me. I waited 8 hours once. Christmas Eve, 1987. My husband was at a bar with his friends, making bets about whether I'd still be at his mother's house when he arrived. I waited. I always waited. Stayed married 30 more years before he died. Her voice cracked slightly. I never stood up. Never walked out. Taught my daughter that waiting was love. She sent me your video and said, this is what you should have done, Mom. You showed her something I never could, that we don't have to wait. After she hung up, I sat in my empty apartment processing. The video had been viewed over 50,000 times now. Comments poured in from women sharing their own stories of waiting, of being trained, of the moment they finally stopped. Jake's ex-wife had started a support group online. No more waiting. It had 3,000 members in 2 days. My husband texted at midnight, the house is too quiet. Then, I found your note. I'd left it on the kitchen counter next to his coffee maker, timed for when I knew he'd find it. 3 words, wait for nothing. He called 17 times between midnight and 3 a.m. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in years. Saturday morning brought unexpected visitors. Mike's ex-wife, Sandra, stood at my door with coffee and donuts. "Thought you could use some sugar and solidarity," she said. We sat on my floor, surrounded by boxes, as she told me about the aftermath of her divorce. "The loneliness hits different when you choose it," she said. "It's not lonely at all. It's peaceful." She showed me the dating app profile Mike had created. His bio read, "Traditional man seeking feminine woman who understands proper roles." 12 matches, she laughed. All bots and women looking for sugar daddies. Turns out the dating pool for controlling narcissists is pretty shallow. My lawyer called while Sandra was there. He's claiming abandonment. Says you left without warning. I waited 3 hours in a diner on our anniversary while he made bets about my loyalty. How much more warning did he need? That's what I told his lawyer. Also, Jennifer's husband tried to hide assets. Transferred everything to an offshore account. Didn't realize Jennifer had keystroke logging software on their home computer. She has every password. The dominoes kept falling. By Saturday afternoon, Tom had been fired and locked out of his company email. Jake's custody situation exploded when his daughter, 17 and tech-savvy, found the group chat backed up on their home computer's cloud storage. She sent it to the judge herself with a note. "This is why I don't want to visit him." My husband posted on Facebook that night, trying to control the narrative, "Going through a difficult time. Some people believe everything they see online. Trust that there are two sides to every story." The comments were brutal. Nancy from the diner had found the post. "I watched you humiliate that poor woman for 3 hours. There's no other side to cruelty." Even his brother commented, "Maybe it's time for some self-reflection." By Sunday he deleted all social media. But the internet never forgets. Screenshots lived on in Reddit threads, Twitter discussions, TikTok analyses of toxic relationships. Someone had turned it into a teachable moment, breaking down the manipulation tactics displayed in the livestream. I started my new job at Morrison Industries on Monday. My desk faced windows overlooking the city, natural light flooding the space. On my wall, I hung a single photo, me at the diner, taken by Nancy just before I left. I'm standing, dignity intact, walking away. Cynthia stopped by with a welcome gift, a coffee mug that read, "Never wait." "Ready for your first leadership meeting?" she asked. I thought about the 15 years I'd spent dimming my light, making myself smaller, waiting for permission to exist fully. Now I was about to walk into a room where my voice would matter, where my ideas would be heard, where no one would ever snap their fingers at me for a drink. "I've been ready my whole life," I said. I was just waiting for the right moment to stop waiting. The leadership meeting had just ended when Cynthia's assistant knocked. "There's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Rachel Chun from Cypher Financial Forensics." Rachel entered like a storm in stiletto heels, carrying a leather portfolio that probably cost more than my old monthly allowance. She was one of Cynthia's network, the one who'd found my husband's hidden cryptocurrency. "We need to talk," she said, pulling out a tablet. "I found something bigger." The three of us sat around Cynthia's conference table as Rachel pulled up spreadsheets that made my head spin. "Your husband wasn't just hiding crypto. He and his friends had a whole investment scheme. They called it the Freedom Fund, their retirement plan for when they divorced their wives." My stomach turned. "When, not if. Look at this." She showed me transaction histories dating back 5 years. Monthly deposits from all 4 of them. The account is in Jake's ex-brother-in-law's name in the Cayman Islands. Current value, $847,000. Cynthia whistled low. "That's wire fraud. And conspiracy." "It gets better," Rachel continued. "They were using their wives' credit to secure loans for investments. Jennifer's credit was used to buy rental properties Tom claimed on his taxes. Your credit was used for a startup investment that he listed as a business expense." I thought about all the times he told me I was too emotional to understand finances, too scattered to manage money. Meanwhile, he'd been using my name, my credit, my future as collateral for his escape plan. "Can we prove it?" I asked. Rachel smiled like a shark. "Already have." Jake's ex-brother-in-law flipped immediately when the FBI knocked on his door. Turns out he doesn't want to go to federal prison for guys who called him barely family in their group chat. That evening, Cynthia's network met at Diana's penthouse. 12 women around a table that had seen more strategic planning than most corporate boardrooms. There was Margaret, who'd taken her ex-husband's Fortune 500 company in the divorce. Linda, whose revenge had been so thorough her ex now lived in his mother's basement at 53. And Susan, the psychiatrist who'd literally written the book on narcissistic abuse. "Show them what you found," Cynthia urged Rachel. As Rachel explained the Freedom Fund, the room's energy shifted from supportive to predatory. These women had all been victims once. Now they were something else entirely. "We can destroy them legally," Margaret said, already texting her contact at the Justice Department. "Or," Linda suggested, "we can do what they fear most. Make them irrelevant." Susan pulled out her phone. "I'm speaking at the American Psychiatric Association conference next month. My topic just changed to the ball and chain syndrome, a case study in collective narcissistic abuse." Diana was already typing. "I'll get the journalist from the Times interested. She owes me a favor. I watched these women mobilize like generals planning a campaign. My revenge had been personal. This was systematic. 3 days later, my husband called from a number I didn't recognize. They froze everything," he said without preamble. "My accounts, the investments, everything." "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. Your Freedom Fund did." Silence. "Then, how did you?" "Jake's ex-brother-in-law." Funny how quickly people abandon you when federal charges are mentioned. This is insane. It was just savings. In other people's names. Using fraud. To plan your escape from marriages you called temporary situations in your messages. He was breathing heavily now. "I need that money for lawyers." "Should have thought of that before you needed lawyers." "Please." The word came out strangled. "I'm staying at a motel. My credit cards are maxed. My family won't talk to me. Even Mike won't answer my calls." Mike had his own problems. Sandra had just posted his dating profile on Twitter with his harassment messages to women who'd rejected him. Hashtag Mike the Creep was trending locally. "Remember what you told Jake about me?" I said. "That I was so well trained I'd wait forever? Well, wait for this. I'm never helping you again." I hung up and blocked the number. At Morrison Industries, my workplace dignity initiative was getting national attention. Companies were calling wanting to implement our protocols. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd learned to recognize abuse by documenting my own. During my presentation to a Fortune 500 board, I used sanitized examples from the ball and chain gang. This spreadsheet, I showed them, tracked women like inventory. Performance metrics for human beings. This is what happens when workplace toxicity goes home. A man in the back raised his hand. "Isn't this a bit extreme? These are private relationships." "Sir," I replied, "these men plan their strategies at work during work hours using work resources. 3 of them have been fired for it. The 4th is under federal investigation. There's nothing private about systematic abuse." The room went quiet. Later, that man's assistant thanked me privately. He does the same thing to his wife. Maybe now he'll think twice. Jennifer called that night, laughing for the first time in months. "Tom's living with his mother. He makes him do chores on a chart like a child. He has to check in by 9 p.m. Poetic justice. The best part. His mother sent me a thank you card. Said I helped her see what she'd created and now she's fixing it." Jake's situation had imploded spectacularly. His 17-year-old daughter had started a TikTok series called My Dad's Toxic Masculinity, where she read excerpts from the group chat with commentary. He had 2 million followers. College recruiters were reaching out, impressed by her advocacy work. "At least something good came from their ugliness," Jennifer said. The journalist Diana had published her piece that week. The headline, "The Ball and Chain Gang, How 4 Men Turned Marriage into a Competition and Lost Everything." It included interviews with all the wives, our stories woven together like a cautionary tale. The article went viral globally. Women from Japan to Jamaica shared their own versions of the ball and chain gang. My husband texted from another new number. "The article is killing me. I can't get hired anywhere. Please make it stop." I didn't respond, but Cynthia did publicly on LinkedIn. Character matters in leadership. Men who systematically dehumanize their partners will do the same to employees. Morrison Industries stands against all forms of abuse, public and private. Her post got 50,000 likes. The comments were a mix of support and horror stories from other women. Rachel called with an update. The FBI is pressing charges. Wire fraud, conspiracy, tax evasion. Your husband's looking at 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years. He'd controlled me for 15. That night I met someone at a coffee shop. Diane, whose story had gone viral 6 months earlier. Her husband had done something similar, though less organized. She'd destroyed him so thoroughly he'd moved to another country. How do you move on? I asked her. After the revenge, after the justice, how do you just live? She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. You realize revenge was never the point. It was reclamation. You weren't destroying him. You were rebuilding yourself. Every action against him was really an action for you. I thought about that as I walked home to my apartment. The city lights blurred like they had that night at the Overlook, but this time from tears of relief, not rage. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. A woman from Ohio. I saw your story. I've been waiting 6 hours for my husband. He's at a bar with friends betting how long I'll stay. But I just left. Thank you for showing me I could. Another text from Australia. My husband has a spreadsheet too. I just sent it to his boss. Another from Texas. The wives are talking. We're all talking. The game is over. I stood outside my apartment building looking up at my lit windows. Inside was my space, my peace, my freedom. No one was timing me, scoring me, training me. The deeper revenge wasn't what we'd done to them. It was what we'd done for each other. We'd connected, documented, supported, and freed each other. The ball and chain gang had created their own destruction by bringing us together. My husband would never understand that. He'd spend years thinking this was about him, about punishment, about revenge. But it had stopped being about him the moment I walked out of that diner. It was about me, finally, beautifully, completely about me. I pulled into the parking garage of Morrison Industries, my BMW purring to a stop in the executive section. 2 years had passed since that gas station encounter and I hadn't looked back since. Today was special. The launch of our nationwide initiative with representatives from 40 companies attending. My phone buzzed as I gathered my presentation materials. A text from an unknown number. A photo of a couple at Nancy's diner sitting at that table, the one with the plaque. The woman was standing up, walking away. The message read, "Following your footsteps. Thank you for showing us the door." I smiled, tucking the phone away. These messages came weekly now, sometimes daily. Women finding their strength in my story, though really they'd always had it. They just needed permission to use it. The conference room was packed. As I entered, conversations quieted. Not the dismissive silence I'd once known, but respectful attention. My assistant, Marcus, yes, the same security guard who'd kept my ex-husband waiting, handed me the clicker for the presentation. Ready to change some lives? He asked with a grin. Always. I began my presentation with a photo. Not of me but of the spreadsheet. Gasps rippled through the room as executives recognized their own industry's toxic patterns reflected in those columns. This is what happens when we allow workplace culture to validate personal abuse, I said. These men felt empowered by professional success to treat their partners as performance metrics. Today we're implementing standards that make such behavior not just unacceptable but impossible to hide. A hand raised in the back. A man, probably mid-40s, wedding ring prominent. Don't you think public humiliation is going too far? These were private relationships. Before I could respond, another voice cut in. Private. Jennifer stood up from her seat in the third row. She was here representing her new consulting firm, dressed in a power suit that made her look nothing like the mouse she'd once been. They live-streamed our humiliation to 47 people. They kept spreadsheets on company computers. They planned their strategies during work hours. The only thing private about it was our suffering. The man sat down, face reddening. After the presentation, Cynthia found me in my office. The Times wants to do a follow-up story. Where are they now? Kind of thing. Let them wonder, I said, then reconsidered. Actually, I'll do it. But only if they include the others. The interview happened a week later. Jennifer, Sandra, Jake's ex-wife Maria, and I sat in Cynthia's conference room while the journalist, the same one who'd written the original viral piece, asked about our lives now. Jennifer spoke first. I own a company that helps women document abuse and prepare for divorce. We've helped 300 women in 2 years. My ex-husband works at a call center. His mother makes him pay rent. Sandra laughed. Mike moved to Idaho, changed his name to Michael, pretends the past doesn't exist. But the internet is forever. Every woman he dates Googles him eventually. Maria's update was the most satisfying. Jake's in minimum security prison. Our daughter got into Yale with her advocacy work. She's writing a book about growing up with a narcissistic father. He writes her letters she doesn't open. And you? The journalist asked me. I'm living, I said simply. Not waiting, not performing, not shrinking. Just living. She wanted more details, so I gave them. The promotion to vice president. The relationship with David, a widower who'd never once timed how long it took me to do anything. The book deal I'd just signed. The foundation I was starting with, the advance. What about your ex-husband? I pulled up something on my phone, a screenshot Jennifer had sent me. A dating profile with a grainy photo, claiming to be a traditional man seeking a genuine connection. His age listed as 5 years younger, his job inflated to logistics coordinator. No mention of a previous marriage. Still lying, I said. Still waiting for someone to believe it. The article came out 2 weeks later. The headline, The Waiting Game. 2 years later, the women who refuse to wait are thriving. But the real pinnacle came the next month. Harvard Business School wanted to use our story as a case study. They flew us all out, put us up in a beautiful hotel. We sat on a panel in front of 200 MBA students, discussing power dynamics, documentation strategies, and the intersection of personal and professional abuse. A young woman in the front row asked, "Do you regret the public nature of your revenge?" I thought about it. I regret that it took public humiliation for him to face consequences. 15 years of private cruelty weren't enough. It shouldn't take viral videos and FBI investigations for abuse to be taken seriously. A young man raised his hand. What would you tell someone who recognizes themselves in your ex-husband? The room went silent. This was brave of him to ask. Stop, Jennifer said firmly. Just stop. Get therapy. Real therapy, not YouTube videos about being an alpha. Understand that your partner is a complete person, not an accessory to your life. And if you can't do that, leave them alone. Let them find someone who can. After the panel, the young man approached me privately. My girlfriend sent me your story 6 months ago. Said I was heading down that path. I'm in therapy now. Couples counseling too. I wanted to thank you for the wake-up call. I studied his face, looking for the performance, the manipulation. But he seemed genuine, scared even. Don't thank me, I said. Thank your girlfriend for warning you. And thank yourself if you actually change. Flying home, I sat next to Maria. She was reading her daughter's book manuscript on her tablet, tears streaming down her face. Good tears? I asked. The best kind. She wrote about choosing to break the cycle. About watching her father's behavior and deciding to never accept it or replicate it. We landed as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. My phone had dozens of messages. From my team, from David, from women I'd never met but who felt like sisters. The last message was from my ex-mother-in-law. A photo of her at the beach, tan and smiling, with a new boyfriend who looked nothing like her ex-husband. The caption, "Never too late to stop waiting for change and become it instead." I stood in the airport watching families reunite, couples embrace, life moving forward in all its messy beauty. Somewhere in this city, my ex-husband was probably getting ready for his night shift, alone in his studio apartment, waiting for his life to improve without doing anything to improve it. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Hadn't been for years. David texted, "Dinner at 7? That new Ethiopian place you wanted to try." "Perfect," I replied. "I'll meet you there." No waiting. No games. No performance. Just two people choosing each other, showing up on time and fully present. The parking garage was mostly empty now, my footsteps echoing as I walked to my car. In my purse was the contract for my foundation, the No More Waiting Fund, which would provide legal assistance to women documenting abuse. As I drove home, I passed Nancy's diner. The neon sign flickered, warm and inviting. Through the window I could see the table, my table, now their table. A woman sat there alone, coffee cup full, phone face up, checking the time. I pulled into the parking lot, went inside. Nancy recognized me immediately, her face lighting up. Just want to talk to someone, I told her, nodding toward the waiting woman. I approached the table, slid into the opposite seat. The woman looked up, startled. She was maybe 30, pretty in that exhausted way of someone who'd been slowly disappearing. He's not coming, I said gently. Or if he does, it'll be with an audience and a cruel punchline. Either way, you don't have to wait to find out. Her eyes filled with tears. How did you? This table. This place. I've been you. She glanced at the plaque, understanding dawning. You're her. The one who walked out. The one who walked toward, I corrected. There's a difference. I gave her my card, Jennifer's card, the lawyer's card. A lifeline of numbers and names. But I love him, she whispered. Love yourself more, I said, standing. He's counting on you not to. I left her there, knowing she might wait tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But the seeds were planted. The network was growing. The game was ending, one woman at a time. My apartment building rose before me, windows glowing like promises. Inside was my life, chosen, built, defended, and loved. On my kitchen counter was a note from David, running late from surgery. Start without me. We'll catch up. Always do. I smiled, pouring myself wine, starting dinner. Not waiting, just living in the space between what was and what would be, finally understanding that the best revenge wasn't making someone else wait. It was never having to wait again. If this story of poetic justice had you cheering for her transformation, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when she sat in Cynthia's office, watching him wait for 3 hours and 14 minutes, finally tasting his own medicine. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.